thinking about scheduling an emergency meeting for tomorrow. Uh, and we like these work sessions. If you're more comfortable coming up to the table and pulling up a seat or the podium, whatever you like. We have three good and important issues today, beginning with a discussion of the composting pilot that's been going on. And Dory, I'm not sure whether you want to go first or Caroline or whomever. Yeah, you can either go up there or you can pull up a seat and we'll give you a microphone, whatever you want. Yes.
On. Okay, just checking.
Hello, Dory.
So, good afternoon. I'm Dory Napoleone. I'm the current board president of the Block Island Conservancy. And thank you. I know you had a lot of meetings for giving us time today to provide you with an update on the compost pilot program. This program, at least I feel, it has been very successful, and that is largely due to the collaboration between Block Island Conservancy, Block Island Recycling Management, the town, and the community. So thank you to everyone who's participated and supported the program. We are very grateful to all of you. Are we doing slides, Millie? Oh, yep. That's okay. So the first slide that's coming up is kind of like, so why compost? And there is maybe the next slide. Yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe the next slide, please. Yeah. So why should Block Island compost? There's a lot of data that's out there around why you should compost. These are just a few examples. But the first stat estimates that each one of us generates 220 pounds of food waste per year. And we use this stat, and the reason I put it up there to help us size the pilot program. So if our year-round population is 900 people, that would equate to 543 pounds of food scraps per day that we would collectively generate across the island. Another fact that people often aren't aware of is that when food goes to the landfill, it rots. It doesn't compost, and that creates methane gas, which is 25 more times potent than CO2. So when you scrape that plate into the garbage and it goes up to Johnston, that's a problem for the environment. Across the country, our food waste in general is equal to emissions from 42 coal-fired power plants. So that's a lot of greenhouse gas that we're putting into the atmosphere from our food waste. And then here on Block Island, that food waste has a big journey to travel. It has to go from your house, restaurant, out to the transfer station, to the ferry, on a truck, to the Johnston landfill. So it has, that little banana peel has quite a journey before it gets buried and in the landfill. By composting here, it also reduces the need to import compost. I know if you go down to the ferry this time of year, there's pallet after pallet that's coming in with compost. We could just be making it right here. It reduces the need to add fertilizer to the soil, which would protect our aquifer from putting in artificial fertilizers. It aerates our soil. I don't know if you garden, but we have clay, sand, soil, and it aerates it for better growth. It certainly reduces the trips to Johnston and saves space in the landfill. And it makes us a more greener, self-sufficient community. So background, I don't want to go over all this detail here, but kind of the gist of it is that Block Island Conservancy has been interested in composting for almost 7 years. We started with a project in 2019 with McPick and 1661 to collect food scraps that went up to the farm for composting. Then we began collecting food at the farmer's market and educating people about the need for compost. And we also held over several years stakeholder meetings of different people in the community to get an idea about their thoughts about composting. In 2022, we established vermicomposting up at the school, which is with the red wiggler worms, and we have 3 bins in different classrooms, and kids collect their food scraps. The difference in the vermicomposting is you can only put vegetable matter into it. But in 2023, we started to get a bit more serious about how to expand composting to a wider part of the island. We sent Cindy Davis, who's on our board, to composting school in Maine, and she got a certificate. So she's qualified to be a compost site operator. And we began researching in-vessel compost options and conducted site visits. And then towards the end of 23, we met with town warden, town manager at that first warden, town manager at that time, and proposed a pilot program. And a working group was formed, which has BIC, Sean McGarry, and Mike Shea. And we started really meeting in 2024, the beginning of the year. Next slide, Millie, thank you. What we were trying to accomplish was to get at least 200 and try out a couple of restaurants so we could learn a little bit about what that means. Obviously, reduce the amount of food waste shipped off the island, produce compost for here on the island, and gain a better understanding of what it would take to really provide an island-wide program. So that's what we've been trying to accomplish with this pilot program that we've been doing. We have over 250 now participating, yeah. This is a little bit of the timeline of what's been going on once we got the work group together. We did our plan, we did our budget, we submitted an application to DEM. This is sized as a medium compost facility. And part of that application also had to do with the fact that all food waste goes into this drum. So we're composting meat and chicken and fish and dairy, everything can go in. We got that application approved in the first quarter of 2024. And at that point, Block Island Conservancy purchased the Eco Drum 720. This Eco Drum is the name of the company, and it is based in Arkansas. And it was designed for the animal mortality business. So it was designed to handle the waste from slaughtering chickens and pig farms is predominantly where it started out. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they got interested in sort of municipal-wide composting. But that design of the animal mortality is kind of what interested us because we wanted something where people could put all their food in. They didn't have to say, can I put this carrot peel? Do I have to separate it out? Everything could just go into the composter, make it easier for everybody. So let's see, we bought the Eco Drum, and along with that, we started our Red Bucket sign up. Caroline brought one. If you don't know what it turned around. Yep. Yeah, she's like Vanna White here today. But all the participants get a red bucket, and on it has a label, which really has all the instructions about what you need to do. And that's, like we said, we've given out more than 250 plus of those at this point. The Eco Drum arrived on the island in April, and many thanks to Sean McGarry, who got it over on the ferry and out to the transfer station. So a big thank you there. And let's see. And then Mike Shea helped us did the work, actually. Thank you, Mike, to get the site prepped out at the transfer station. We needed an electric outlet installed, and the garage door in the building needed to be replaced. It wasn't working. So once all of that was completed, we began food scrap collection in early June. And you can kind of see across the bottom there, we collected our first ton and then 5 tons and built up towards the end of August, we were at our capacity for the drum, which is 500 to 600 pounds a day. And we gradually wanted to build up to that. So by the end of the summer, we were at that point. We got to see what that was like. A lot of food waste going in, which unfortunately is still just a drop in the bucket for what's produced here on the island. But by the end of the season, we had Jane Murner, who runs Earth Care Farms on the mainland. That is the largest compost facility in the state. So she came out to take a look at what we were doing, how we were doing, and did a little evaluation and gave us some advice about some changes to make in the program, which we're going to talk about a little bit. We sent our compost out for testing when it was ready to make sure that it had no pathogens and that it was a viable compost to put into the soil. And then in the fall, probably more towards November, we started giving out compost. So to the participants that are giving food waste, they get free compost. One of the things that it is free for everybody to be in the program. So Block Island Conservancy has been covering the cost of dropping off food waste. So that weight is taken out of your household trash at present. So it's free to drop off, and for those people that participate, they say, wow, my trash hardly weighs anything, because a lot of your trash is your food waste, which is heavy. It weighs a lot more than beer cans. We also experimented a little bit in the beginning of this year, and we put, courtesy of Sam's husband, Tom Brown, 350 pounds of deer remains into the drum to test that out for composting. And then as things have slowed down, we've started to kind of look at where we are, what we've learned, and where we want to go. So as of today, actually, I think we might be up to 20 tons. This says 18 tons, but I think we put about 20 tons into the drum. And for those of you who haven't seen it, this is just a picture showing the loading process, which is one of the things we want to change with these self-tipping hoppers that require the use of, is that a front-end loader? I always call it the wrong thing. Yes, a very large piece of equipment. And then with the help of Sean to do that. And then this is what the drum looks like. Did we decide on the name? Big Eartha. We had a cookie jar at the Earth Day Fair this past weekend and asked people to put suggestions in for what we should call the drum. So the winner, I guess, was Big Eartha. So that's Big Eartha. And then to the right is our first giveaway, actually, of compost in the fall. So that's what the product looked like. Okay, so where we are at this point, we've remained on our schedule, and I think we're actually a little under our budget. We have 250 plus households signed up. When I said we sent the compost off for testing, that went up to Wood End Laboratory, which is in Maine, and they're kind of considered the premier place to have that done. That was a recommendation from Jane from Earth Care Farms. So that testing happened, and we will test periodically throughout the process. So that was the compost we're giving away now, but we will test again when we have another large batch. Compost is available to the participants, and we're really working hard now to kind of figure out what did we learn and what are we going to do about what we learned. That 18 tons of food scraps is equivalent to burning about 1,100 plus gallons of gasoline. So that's sort of what we saved at this point. This chart, I want you all to study it carefully, but I mostly put it up just to kind of let you know that we are collecting data. We collect every pound that goes in. Along with the food waste, we have to mix it with a carbon source, which is predominantly wood chips or wood shavings is what we've been putting in. And so some of the bars, the orange bar is the food, the green bar is the pine shavings, the blue is the wood chips. And the really important one is the temperature, which is running across the top. Ideally, we want the compost to always be in the drum between 130 and 160 degrees. We had trouble with that over the very cold months this winter. And that compost that we did put in the drum, including with the deer, we're going to put it back in when we get the pile warmed up to where we want it. It's creeping up right now, but it's not quite where we want it. I think we've learned a little bit about how we need to change what's called the recipe, which is the combination of the carbon, the nitrogen, and the moisture through the recipe. Yeah, yeah. The drum does not heat it doesn't heat. It just slowly turns. And when I say slowly, it's like watching paint dry. And we just turn it once a day or in the summer, maybe twice a day. It's a 15-minute rotation. And then there's a small fan inside that aerates the pile. Right now, it's set to 1 minute every hour. So it's a very low electricity use process, but it's the bacteria in the food waste in this aerobic condition that heat up and get it up to that temperature. So we're a little low, and we have that separated out, the material that's come out. It's a continuous process. So food that goes in today comes out the drum in 2 to 3 weeks. I'm sorry, Molly. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. No, obviously you're getting a lot more material in the season,
Sure.
season.
Yep.
Than off season. So what percentage of your participants of the 250, how many of those are year round?
You know, I don't know. When we started the Red Bucket giveaway, we were doing it just to year round. And we did like, okay, year round. And then we didn't have any more takers. So we started doing it to anybody that has a house out here. So I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we have a list of who the people are, so we could probably figure that out.
Right.
Interestingly enough, though, we had more year-rounders join at the end of the season. I think they were just too
Right.
busy when we started up, couldn't,
Yes.
focus on it. But we'd had quite a few people, and we still, I think we've had 10 signups in the last week. So people are joining still, which we can take more people, because even though we hit our max, I think we also understand a little bit about how to manage that waste. And a substantial amount of food waste also came from the restaurants.
Was my other question. How many restaurants do you have?
Well, last year we had Ellen's, Persephone's, and Three Sisters were the restaurants that participated. We haven't figured out this year what we're going to do. And it greatly changes the mix of what you get. When Persephone's dropped off, we got a lot of coffee grounds. When Ellen's dropped off, we got a lot of eggshells. So it really varied what came to
Right.
us.
Right.
But that's fine. Next slide. The lessons learned. So one of the things that we heard loud and clear last summer were some complaints about flies and odors from the food drop-off. And also kind of the aesthetics of people were kind of grossed out about dropping off their own food waste and looking at other people's food waste. But we are going to be replacing the hoppers with trash cans with fixed lids. We're kind of in the process of doing that now. And hopefully over the next month or so, we'll swap that out. One of the other recommendations, I will say when we got these complaints, we did contact URI and Rhode Island Food Council Policy also for suggestions. Jane gave us some suggestions about what to do about that issue. One of the recommendations was to have, when people dump their food, throw a scoop of sawdust on top of that food, and that kind of covers it up and helps with that problem. And we are also looking at implementing a biofilter to minimize odors, particularly for Sean in the building. Loading of the drum, we're trying to make that process a bit more efficient. So in that picture that I showed with Sean with the big front end loader, I call it, yellow piece of equipment, it required that in order for us to load the hoppers, Sean had to stop what he was doing. Normally, we could only do it after the transfer station closed because we didn't want to move that equipment across the parking lot and load the drum at that point in time. That's some of what also allows those hoppers to get so overflowing, is because we couldn't load them till after the transfer station closed. With the trash cans, we should be able to fix that issue. So we recently purchased, it just arrived last week. It's called a Dump Master, but I call it a dumper tipper loader thingy. And I welcome you all to come to the transfer station to look at it, but it's like a cage that we just slide the trash can into, it lifts it up and we'll dump it into the drum. So that we will alleviate Sean from having to do that with us every single day. It will give us more flexibility. We can load it when the trash can's full. So we're hoping that that will really help with many of the issues that we've encountered. The compost needs to be screened when it comes out. Some of the wood chips that we've been putting in are material that are from the landscape debris that has been chipped out at the transfer station, and there's sometimes some pretty big pieces in it. So those don't break down in the short period of time. We're putting them back in the drum, but the this is what the, by the way, I pulled that out of the metal, the scrap metal. And you can see it doesn't smell. So we are screening the compost manually right now, which is a very slow process. It's somewhat therapeutic. If anybody needs a break, come out on Saturday. We're going to do some, because you just stand, just like kind of screen the compost. And so, but we are looking to kind of speed that up a little bit. And we've ordered a small piece of equipment that's kind of like a shaker that will help us get through the material faster, because we do have a lot to give away and people are clamoring for it. We're constantly getting phone calls. When am I getting my compost? So we want to get all the material that we have ready out and in the ground. I talked a little bit about the recipe. I think we're learning quite a bit. One of the things I think we need to start doing is actually also recording the air temperature. Because it was very cold here in January, and it would be really good to know like how that affected us. This last lesson, this was a real eye-opener for me in particular. I did not realize that there really is no way to get food from rental houses and restaurants out to the transfer station. This program predominantly is working with the people that bring their trash to the transfer station, but there's no pickup system right now that would accommodate the food waste. So that is something that we're still kind of exploring what the options are. To me, there's actually a great business for somebody to, not me, but somebody out there, for a small business to move this food waste from A to B. But the restaurants, it's all going in the dumpster. It's all mixed with everything else. The rental houses, it's all mixed with everything else. So there's no great way right now to separate that and get it out to the transfer station. So at the same time that we're implementing some of the enhancements to the program, the dumper tipper loader thingy and the things that I hope will help with odors and flies, we've been thinking about what might an expansion look like. We really believe that we've learned a lot in this program, and what we've learned could inform an expansion. The logistics issue, that's a big one, how to get more food waste out to the transfer station. From the equipment standpoint, EcoDrum has several other configurations that, we could have 3 side by side, we could have bigger ones, we could add on to the one we have. There's a number of options of how you could expand to take more food waste. Cost, right now, Block Island Conservancy, little bit contributions from Sean, but Block Island Conservancy and a grant from the ROSA Foundation has funded the project, and we're continuing to fund the enhancements to it. So we've been looking at what it might cost to expand, and are there grant opportunities out there? What kind of fundraising could we do? One of the problems that we have run into with grants is they predominantly are all the municipality has to apply for them. We're a 501c3, we don't qualify as a nonprofit. Most of the compost grants, the town has to apply for them. Location, where to expand it. Thank you for letting us put the drum out at the transfer station. And, you know, maybe at some point we'd like to build it out there, which kind of brings me to conclusion, and that we understand there's a need to redesign the transfer station. And if that were to occur, we would really like to see an expanded compost facility as part of the project. But I'm going to let Sean talk about the overall needs of the transfer station. Questions for me?
I just had a question. So is your
Yeah.
emphasis on the businesses or is it on the homes as far as for your future? I mean, because I would assume some of the restaurants would really pick the volume up.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about increasing the volume, I don't think. I mean, I think this is, our 500 pounds a day is a drop in the bucket. I don't know if Sean really has a better handle on the real number,
Yeah.
but it's big. It's big. So that I think there are certainly ways that I just, you know, in Providence right now for food waste collection, they have a small business that somebody on an e-bike with a little trailer behind going around and picking up the cans at people's houses.
You
know,
just
could have them-
use the mic so everybody at
Oh,
home
I'm
can hear you
sorry.
better. That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah, so that, like, we were just talking to that business up there. So there's an opportunity. And the other thing I maybe isn't quite as clear, but by switching to the trash can model for loading, right? That also makes us more flexible for a restaurant or a household to just use that type of container, and then it's just getting it to the transfer station. Before that, with the hoppers and that was a hard lift.
So as far as expansion, is that something that could happen prior to redoing the transfer station? Or is that something that would have to wait until the transfer station is?
Yeah, I think that's a bigger question. I mean, I have ideas about how we could do it on the space that's there, right? But you know, there's other issues at play that you know, I think if we were to say that we aren't going to do anything at the transfer station for 5 years, or I don't know what it is, I think there's an opportunity for us to expand at the transfer station. But you know, I was hoping that we could come up with a design for expansion and implement that wouldn't be a throwaway, you know, that could incorporate into whatever changes, you know, need to be made there.
So really, unless we were going to do a major expansion, you wouldn't really be seeking to expand the program tremendously because you don't really have the capacity.
I'm not sure the
Like you wouldn't-
capacity meaning.
You wouldn't have the capacity to handle like 3 times as much.
No, but
material.
but we would be, we're game, I think. Shouldn't speak for my entire board, but I think we're game to say, like, if you said triple the program, you know, we think that would be great. Use space out at the transfer station, right? I think we'd be game to look for the grant opportunities and the fundraising to make that happen. You know, there's some point at time where we, meaning Block Island Conservancy and the volunteers cannot run this thing, you know, that needs to be part of the either Block Island Recycling Management or some other business entity that wants to run it. I mean, there's an opportunity here for someone to sell this compost. You know, compost, like I said, if you go down to the ferry, you know, people are paying a pretty penny to have that shipped out here. You know, so there's a whole business opportunity here that we're not interested in doing. We're just really interested in getting the program going and building it up and then, you know, here, would you like to run it? You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
And do you think, like coordinating grants with the town is a possibility?
You know, each set of circumstances is going to be a little bit unique, but given that we own the facility, there's always opportunity for us to make that argument that it's a partnership.
Does I've forgotten, since I, did the tour with the Echo Drum guy.
With Byron?
Does do those have to be inside?
They don't have to be inside. They suggest that they be like you have an overhang, you know,
Right,
that
right.
a shed thing over them.
And how much
Um,
is there room for what, one more line, two more lines? I'm just curious. I guess, Sean, that's probably,
In the building?
yeah,
I don't think there's room in the building
Right.
unless something else moves out of the
yeah,
building.
yeah.
You know, I mean, some days to load the drum, and this happened last weekend, they had to move all the mattresses.
Sure.
Right? So that like
yeah.
they'd have to go someplace, like there's stuff in there that would have to
Yeah.
be someplace else. I keep telling Sean, give us the building and we'll build you a nice office outside the building. Where you could look at the beautiful
could just-
view. and-
June has room.
But Molly, one of the things that we had been looking at with possibly in our ideas about expanding, we're working on plans of what it might look like, but you know, like a Quonset huts type thing, you know, with a few eco drums in it, not a big elaborate structure or something like that.
Interesting.
Any other questions?
You guys have?
I think Sean.
What's the
Sean's
capacity of-
part of this presentation, so.
Sorry. What's the capacity of this unit that's on site now?
It's 5 to 600 pounds per day is the capacity. You know, and with that, when you're loading 500 pounds of food waste, you're loading double the volume of carbon.
And presumably, if you had multiple units, you would use, say, only one during the winter.
Yeah, I could
So you
envision.
deploy them as the population
Yeah,
increases.
I could envision a time where like you'd have 3 of them and, you know, one was year round. One, maybe you ran all the deer through it in the winter, you know, possibly, you know, and, you know, 3 had to run for the summer, that kind of, you know, something
Right.
along that model.
Yep.
Can I ask, so you said you throw wood chips in there. Are those from like the landscaping area at the dump, or do you buy those, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so we've been doing a combination, but there's on that graph there were 2 separate bars. One was for all the landscaping wood chips, and the other was pine shavings that we occasionally order. And the predominant reason we're doing that is sometimes it's just too difficult we rely on Sean to have to go way out, get those chips, bring them in. You know, so that I think that my sense is that there's enough carbon on the island to do a expanded project. There's certainly enough for this project.
Right, so like if you were to coordinate with the landscapers or the power company for the wood chips that they're producing, would that be something you guys could all do together?
As long as.
Because you've got so much space up there to store that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all of those wood chips could go in. And I mean, what's the other thing that I take wood chips from like behind the power company. I've been getting them, you know, now that they've chipped right, I bring them home and I put them around my yard. And what's really bad about that is that, you know, by fall I have bittersweet, poison ivy, I have all kinds of things growing out of those wood chips because they're taking them, you know, you know what they're cutting down, right? So all the seeds are in there. When we put those wood chips into the drum, that 130 plus temperature kills the germination of the seeds. So the other thing about what's in that bucket is when you put that in your garden, you're not going to get tomatoes from last year and, all those little rogue seeds coming out. There's no seed germination. It's one of the things they test for in that compost. And that would alleviate spreading all this stuff all over the place with the wood chips from the power company and, the roads that, that tons of bittersweet, things like that in those wood chips.
Right.
Interesting.
Sean, do you want to? Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dory.
So yes, thanks again for the opportunity to come. And this is a great example of a public-private nonprofit working group, and it's the only way you can pull it off. There's a cost associated with everything, and there's diversion costs, but there's still, operating costs. So trying to come to a place of an economy of scale, I would say, where it, can pay for its self-function would involve a build-out. And, I'm in agreement. I mean, having this group working, doing all the data collection and helping out every way they can is made it possible. Having the town supply, doors, mics, always available. He's part of the working group. And so with the three groups working together, it's possible. If it were just one business, I don't know where the profitability would come unless they had the opportunity to sell the material, because that's where the revenue that would pay for the expense. So, but as far as expanding the program at the transfer station, we're currently doing 500 pounds a day in the summertime. That's with the number of restaurants we use, the number of households, and we get that temperature right up there. The production is fantastic. And then it drops off again as the household and restaurant participation declines. So what you would do is want to add all the restaurants in the wintertime to bring that up. But then what do you do with those restaurants in the summertime? You say, well, you can't participate anymore because we're going to go back to our summer model. So once you add people above that summer peak, then you have to build out the program,
Right.
which would require a larger drum for the summer and a smaller drum kind of thing. That's why it has to expand. And as you know, the space at the transfer station, although it looks on the surface to be a large area of land, it's a very small section. It ends at the rock wall that's just above the compactor area. Most of the stuff where the statues is a covered landfill that can't be used for anything. And then we have the area to the north where we process recycling and store some vehicles, and the area to the south, which is a loading dock and where the building is located. So the building is essentially not quite big enough, but still too large because it's in the wrong location. It's kind of smack dab in the middle of the most useful area. So we have a lot of traffic issues. We have residential and commercial traffic users using the facility all at the same time. So trying to make all of these things work with such a small building space located in an area that takes up most of the usable space is creating some real obstacles. And I think you're all aware of that. And we've talked about starting to enter into a redesign phase where we're going to take a look at what the next 20, 30 years of the transfer station is going to look like, whether or not it's going to include composting, whether it's going to include residential diversion. There's all sorts of discussions that are going on around that. If we want to keep this program viable and continuing to grow and people to participate, we need to look at building it out in the short term before a redevelopment of the transfer station takes place. So what the Conservancy would like to do is design what that looks like, set up buildings, and then try to position it in an overall map of, what that redesign is going to look like. So that, because to have these Quonset buildings, you have to have a slab poured, and you don't want to pour slab and tear that up again in a couple of years. So what's of the most necessity of getting the expansion going, getting the transfer station redevelopment is getting an engineer involved and start this planning process so that at least over the next couple of years, we can develop a blueprint of what the facility is going to look like. And hoping that the town will step up and get that ball rolling.
Don't we have money?
There's $50,000 in the capital budget that begins July 1.
Honestly, I guess I've been here the longest among the four of us, but it has always been a can that we kick until next year. And I think we all felt like actually appropriating $50,000 to get the ball rolling was an important step. And it's up to Amy, Mike, you, Dory. I don't know what the money flow looks like or what the work plan looks like. What do I know? But there is finally some money to get this rolling, which I think is very positive.
I think you should set up a working group that, and let us chime in with the engineer to look at some other facilities, figure out what our needs are, and start putting some
Mhm.
plans on paper.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying let's start building
No.
tomorrow or the next year, but once you have that plan, then you can begin to allocate, seek grants, things like that to build the facility out.
So let me ask you something. So, if you go to Europe, Spain or Italy, or the separation of garbage is so much more elaborate than what we do. I mean, we tend to just chuck everything in a bag. And do you see us going in that direction? Do you see us going in a direction where garbage is even more finely sorted so that it can go to very specific places or be stored without it getting smelly? Or do you see what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
more composting. Do you see something like that happening? I mean, just because we are so small, and yet the transportation to take all of this garbage to the landfill is pretty extraordinary.
Yes. So in those countries that you're talking about, garbage is socialized. That is, the government pays for all of the garbage. They put out all of the collection containers. They run the trucks. They run the disposal facilities, and it's part of your tax dollars countrywide. It's not just in individual cities. One of the best ones I know of is Barcelona, which does an amazing job with their different waste. But are we moving towards socialized garbage here on Block Island? I don't know. Do we want residents paying for commercial customers? Do we want commercial, I don't know that we're, as a country or a town, ready to do that, but having more options for disposal at the transfer station or composting, or, we've looked at waste to energy through gasification, something that's still kind of on a back burner. Hopefully it's going to take off sooner than later, but there's a lot of options, and we have a very small footprint. So we have to look at ideas like diverting residential users during the peak of the season who are just dropping off a bag of recycling and a bag of trash and get them away from the facility so that we can use the facility more for construction and demolition processing and, composting, waste to energy issues and things like that, commercial users. So it's going to take a lot to figure out how we're going to best utilize all of our commercial space on the island, to whether it's going to be for fire rescue or transfer station or school or housing, or this all kind of has to work together as, one plan. But I don't want to see bureaucracy slow down progress, because, this program is ready to build out and expand. And if we wait another 5 years, 10 years, I think it'll just die off from attrition, because there's not quite that economy of scale to keep this momentum going. So
I'm gonna come up.
Chris Warfel, that's how. About 18 years ago, Bill Penn and I did a pretty comprehensive study under a grant on composting. And we have numbers that are old, but we've given the model to the Conservancy that at that time had quantified what we thought was the waste streams to do composting. The browns, which are, the woody material, and the restaurant waste and the home waste. Now, do we know if it was perfect? I guarantee you it's not, but it was a good shot at trying to estimate what the island was like. So I think we do have the necessary ingredients to make compost on the island. We don't have to import anything to do that. We found out that the best way to get more greens from the restaurants was to be giving them a container or containers. So the staff could be taught how to separate and put the compostables in their own proper place and not be a nuisance odor or logistical handling problem. We also communicated the economics to the restaurants and that everything they put in compost is less than they have to pay for in to the transfer station. Sorry, Sean. But the idea was this was a way for them to save money. It added to the diversion benefit to the town and to the community. It saved the businesses money. I did require a little more labor because of the handling of it, but economically, way back when we did the analysis, it was almost a 5% return to the community on that, which, it doesn't sound like much, but it meets the town's threshold for investment. So I really hope that we can expand this. All the analysis that we did showed that this was viable, 18 years ago. I was so happy that the Conservancy took this on. And I really think it's a good use of the taxpayer dollars to increase it. Thank you.
I think, if you would, Dory, just extend to your board our thanks, because this doesn't happen without without an organization, whether that's the town or a nonprofit or a business that is willing to make the investments that you've made. And but not unique to us. I mean, the truth is, to get these kinds of programs going, there has to be an initial financial push, frankly. Sometimes that comes from the town, sometimes that comes from nonprofits, sometimes it comes from the grassroots. It'll vary, but please do express our thanks from the community for what is a really cool program that seems ripe for expansion. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, guys. Chief Obi? How are you,
Chris
man?
Obi, Block
Welcome.
Island Fire Chief. A while back, I sent you all a letter
Yeah.
with concerns as far as accessibility to laneways, driveways, and concerns on wildland fires. And so I have deep concerns. And let's start off with laneways and driveways. As we all know, that some people like them very tight and small. Some people don't even realize that we can't get in there with an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, fire trucks, etc. So we need to educate the public. We can do that through, and we have been through our Facebook page. And then we're going to have a website getting up here pretty soon, probably by June, the fire department, but maybe the bulletin board, different places, flyers, etc. But we have to get the word out to the community that, well, there's a lot of laneways and roadways we can't get down. You have Littlefield and Son, their cab is wide as maybe the ambulance, but the tank on the back is very small. The box is much bigger on the ambulance. Yeah, we can run a smaller one. That one is typically to go away with, but it's going to slow the process down getting to these homes, and it has, and it will. And there's some that we just can't get into. So how do we fix that? I don't know. Is there an ordinance? Does the town have an ordinance that's in place, and I hear yes, I hear no, I don't know, but we have often talked about a 14 by 14 or a 12 by 14 laneway, driveway. That's pretty big. It gives it a couple of years to grow back and keep cutting back. But if we could hit that with an ordinance or some mechanism to get the people to help themselves so we can help them.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers. I just have the concern.
Yeah.
And it's a large one, and we've had it for a long time. And more and more homes, more vehicles, more problems, more people, more problems. So
Yeah.
just compounding.
Chris, do you have, or does anybody have, not you, not you, and this is not off the top of your head, but, do you have a sense of sort of which ones keep you awake at night? You know what I mean? So in other words, if there's, if there's, I don't know, I just see Doug Michelle. So like if it's Lewis Farm,
Those farm, that roads are pretty
Keith
accessible
Lew-
getting down there, but
Keith
like,
Lewis is a notorious scofflaw.
I know.
Uh,
Dunn's Cartway always pops in my mind down by the bachelor's house, and in there it's very narrow and tight. And
Yeah.
here's the other concern. So you got all this narrow and tight coming in. Now you maybe have people trying to get out.
Right.
So all of a sudden everything's jammed up. So there's a lot of those scenarios, I think, where people are trying to flee and the department may be trying to get in. They're very tight. There's no way you can get over. The road is I don't know, 50 years old, and it's dug, the sides are
Yeah,
up this high,
Yeah.
from grading and et cetera. So there's a lot of situations there. Fortunately, I don't think we've run into too many, but
The reason
we will.
The reason I was asking that is, if we had a sense of priority, we could theoretically reach out to those people and
Mhm.
say, look,
I think somehow we got to come
you've been
together.
identified
Yeah.
as one of the spots where you really need to clear your laneway because people are afraid that if, we're concerned that if there's a fire or an emergency, we're not going to
Mhm.
be able to get trucks in.
I think there's a lot of
If
little
people aren't
mechanism,
responsive to that. I don't,
a lot of little mechanisms that could be used from the delivery companies. But how long does that last, and how, everyone gets busy, and
yeah.
so I don't know if it's like, I don't want to pick on anybody, let's say town road crew. They drive around for a week in the winter or whatever and mark all these laneways that they think is a problem, bring it forward, and then I don't know what the next step is.
Right.
So I think a lot of it should fall on the town. Maybe I'm wrong.
Can I
It's
interrupt you for
very-
a second? Because I think you,
Before I forget this, it's very hard on a volunteer part to get volunteers to go out and do that.
Mhm.
Because your volunteer base is really falling off. So-
Right.
Sorry.
well, I just wanted to interrupt you because you just expressed a really good idea, which is that you already have people who are delivering to homes all the time,
Mhm.
right? So you have like all of the package delivery people and oil delivery and gas delivery and, my business, I deliver.
Right.
So maybe if you were to set up some sort of like, hey, tell us what you're running into, like in a sort of a blind way. Like, I don't want to be like
Yep. No, to
batting
that,
somebody out for their narrow driveway, but
Right.
like if it could go in as like
if they could
just
flag it in
you
a
taking
book,
information, and then you would have to go check it out.
right? And also we come up with a flyer. I don't know if it's a postcard style, a little bigger, that we could give these drivers and other entities, so they're going around and they could hand it. So listen, this is concerning.
Right. Like even now I'm thinking taxi drivers, right?
Sure.
So you have all these people who already go to all these houses. They already know what the situation is. So they could maybe just, if they had a place that they could just funnel the information to where you could receive it. And then you look at it and you say, well, the oil guy and the taxi driver and the UPS guy all said that this is a very challenging location.
So whose problem is it? Other than it's our problem because we have to get there. It's the homeowner's problem. I would say it's the homeowner's problem, but who, other than volunteers in a mechanism like that, but what's the next step to them? You can't make them do it, right? So if we could get some information out to them through mechanisms like that, and then we could funnel it in some information to wherever it should go, that's great. But
I think.
where do we go?
Yeah,
How do we
well-
do it?
Well, I mean, I think where I was going with the spots that are problematic, you know, and sort of prioritizing those is you actually say eyeball to someone, your laneway is a problem,
Mhm.
as opposed to, and I'm not, I mean, I think whatever Facebook ads, I think that's all really worthwhile and you'll catch some people. But when you tell someone to their face that they are taking a risk.
I don't want to
uh,
call somebody out on social media.
No, I don't,
You know what I
and I
mean?
don't,
But-
I don't mean as a calling out.
Right.
I mean it as to me, you're doing someone a favor because,
Yeah.
because if the house catches fire and the equipment can't get
And I
in.
think many of us in the department have relayed to people, but it doesn't just seem like it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
If we could get 10%, 20% of the people, we're that much further ahead.
Yeah.
You know, the town roads, I think are all pretty good, but I don't have the answers. I got
Yeah.
some thoughts. I don't have much volunteer time left. You know, I mean, just doing this job,
Yeah.
what it takes, and just we need more. I don't,
Yeah.
and I'm reaching out to you guys. I don't know, maybe there's something that the town can push forward somehow. I'm bringing it to your attention that there is a problem.
Chief,
So-
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think a lot of it is education for some people. And I think what really resonates is the fire is one thing, but when you say a rescue, because I think in people's mind, you know, I'm hoping my house doesn't catch on fire, but there's a good chance a rescue may need to get down here at some point. I think it resonates a little bit for the urgency in their mind of it being a realistic.
Do you run into a lot of trouble with the ambulance and fire stations and trying to get in and out of these levers?
Yes, we have even punctured the top of the original rescue one. That's by low.
Oh, yeah. Gotta come.
We've done a lot of damage to the vehicles. You know, there's no doubt the sides of them are gouged, the sides of them, the paint's just, it's part of it, but we got to fix it.
Yes, we've even punctured the roof of the original rescue one by low-lying branches going across the driveway, trying to get in. We've ripped mirrors off. There's a lot of damage that happens to the vehicles.
Amy, do you think it's possible if, you know, if there were a mechanism, like if rescue or if fire said, you know, we had a call down Dunn's Cartway and it was pretty hairy, that the town could send a letter to the property owner, not necessarily in an enforcing way, but just sort of like, look, it's come to our attention that there was a call down your laneway and we're concerned about its width.
This,
I was going to ask whether fire and rescue send that letter.
Yeah,
So
well,
which
that's a
to
good
me
question.
would be more compelling. We tend to be the
Yeah.
enforcement
Yeah.
people and we don't have a mechanism for enforcing anything on those private roads.
Yeah.
So we can ask nicely and point it out, but to me, it would be more compelling from the people who I'm actually trying or hoping get to me in an
Right.
emergency.
Right.
this could also affect homeowners insurance.
Right. That's.
And
yeah.
people need to be made aware of that as well. If we can't get there, we can't get there.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Carolyn, you had your hand up for a while. Yes, if you don't mind.
Carolyn Collins. Just a thought, if it will affect, you know, insurance, and for all these people that rent their homes, what about like the rental agencies, you know, that postcard you spoke of, Chris, what about the postcard going out through the rental agencies that would say, you know, you've got renters, you've got to protect them. Our ambulance and our crews have to be able to get in there. It's going to affect your insurance, you know, that kind of thing. That would be like an approach, an in through the through the rental agencies, I would think.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And Jen has identified the short-term rental database as a mechanism by which the town can facilitate distribution electronically of something like the flyer that Fire and Rescue
flyer.
put together.
Right.
Because I think a lot of these people probably don't even realize, that's the shame of it all, is that they're probably like, oh geez, really? Like,
Yeah.
whoops.
But also without the enforcement part of that, we really don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how other communities might deal with this? Because it can't be unique to us, right? Just.
I don't. I have done no search
Okay.
into that.
Like Bill was saying, if we go to educating and if we got a letter to you guys and we have, and then the next step is I have put together a flyer. Get it. Sorry, get it. I forgot. She was saying, get it to the realtors, and if they can pass it to the homeowners and put it in there when their check goes out that they received, by the way, and we can get that done pretty soon and print a bunch of those out, and I'd be willing to get those to the rental companies, and I'm sure there's other places also that I haven't thought of.
Is there a standard measurement that?
14 by 14 we would like to see. That's pretty big.
So-
That's on the card that?
Yeah, and that'll be all laid out on the card too.
Amy, I didn't have time to review the utility standard, but that's something that we should probably do. And I think,
Yeah.
Chief, you mentioned Dunn's Cartway. I think if we start, some of those private laneways that are, what's the term I'm looking for, that have been subdivided, I believe there is something on file now.
In the subdivision regulations, if a property has gone through that process, 14 by 14 is the standard when you've been through the process, assuming there are no exceptions granted. The problem or the challenge is that a lot of the other areas that have been identified as having either being too narrow or not enough clearance aren't subject to that section, meaning they haven't been through a subdivision process. And so the town's ordinances today don't have another mechanism, a more general requirement on those private right-of-ways. Yeah.
What if, I mean, certainly we would have to begin with deciding what is the criteria, right? If it's 14 by 14, 14 by 14 and what else? What else would you need? If there's anything else, then we would have to advertise it. And I think we would have to go, a year or so just notifying people, finding a way to notify people, educate people, using the mechanisms that you have, whether it's social media and postcards and face-to-face conversations, maybe using the mechanisms that the realtors and the town have as far as notifying people. But I wonder if after that point, we could move to something more severe, meaning when you get a building permit, you would have to prove that you have a 14 by 14 cleared path. And if you want a short-term rental license, you'd have to prove that you have a 14 by 14 foot cleared path. Because we have to normalize it and build the expectation. We can't just start penalizing people. You have
Educate
to-
first and see where we go, and I like the ideas on building permits and short-term housing rentals, wherever they have to come here for licensing. But there's that's great. I think that would work, but somebody has to go out and do that and inspect it. And it's just the department doesn't have it. As much as it's very, very important to us, I just don't see there's enough,
No resources there,
no resources and manpower on our end to do it.
So
But if-
oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Molly.
I'm just wondering if you guys could build some sort of format to begin this that expresses your expectation, how people can meet that expectation. So if they're not going to go out there and clip it themselves, maybe you could provide a list of landscapers that do that kind of work. And then maybe set up some sort of information feed by which that list of people I mentioned before, like that delivery people and taxi drivers, so they could say, hey, I noticed this thing, you're going to have a really hard time getting to this.
Maybe on the website, there'll be an area there where you can get into and you would just put the information down, and then the person that's hosting that can gather that information and get letters out. And we do have somebody that takes care of that website that would do that.
Right, because I just feel like before we go to like, penalizing people or making life difficult on licensing, we need to make sure that everything has been done.
I agree. I don't want
To standardize
finding
this.
people and not losing friends of the department by any means. That's why I was kind of like, let me push this on the town, but but there's a lot of good, I just don't want it like when I walk out the door and this thing goes away and we're looking at it again next year,
Yeah.
so. And then the other side of this is the wildland fire thing really scares me. I'm surprised we haven't had one. We have tremendous amount of underbrush. And a lot of people have it tight to their homes. And we need to educate them on a big area, how much you want to keep it away from your house, 5 to 8 feet of any burnable material around your homes. Have a clear laneway out. You know what I mean? So you can get out what people may be getting in. It's just, if we get one and it doesn't get put out quick, and we always have a southerly southwest type of wind, 10 to 15. It'll run faster. It'll burn faster than you can run. It's just gonna, and I don't think that if it got big enough, we're just gonna have to get people out from in front of it, and it's gonna go. We don't have the resources.
Yeah.
In that there was a little blurb in that letter that I don't know what year in the 50s, but they had 150 people, firefighters and people fighting this 7-acre fire that was running pretty strong and took some buildings down, but they had 150 people. And it's not saying
Right.
that people aren't
Yeah.
going to come from their homes and help, and they will, but how do we what's in place? How do we stop this from happening? And again, we go burn barrels. We got to be real careful with it. Make sure, if they have one, that they have a cover on it. No burning of brush in the yards. If anybody asks me, I just straight up and say no. No burning. Sorry. We don't have the resources and manpower to chase it if it gets going. So things like that.
So I'd like to put this laneway thing on an agenda at some point relatively soon, just so we can have a more, a clearer discussion around, how do we move on making people more aware? What are other jurisdictions doing? I really don't have, I don't have any sense of that. And as I say, I'm as guilty as anybody is saying we're unique, but in this regard, it can't be unique to us.
You get in the rural Gloucester, Foster, all those places out there. I can
Martha's
reach out to
Vineyard
them.
looked exactly like this in
Yeah.
certain parts of it. I mean, it just would be helpful to know.
I'll try to reach out to some
Yeah,
the local chiefs and chiefs from the other islands.
that would be really
Yeah,
helpful.
the scary thing is I did ask the national, so we'd be able to get hit buckets. We know that. Helicopters that can pick water up in a bucket and then deploy it. And it was just a straight up no.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
What comes, Sosha, Cohen, Chapel Street, Bill, education. The quickest and cheapest way, I think, to educate the public is 2 ways. An insert in the tax bill with the information that people need. Secondly, the bib. And we could have regular posts on the bib reminding people, it's a dry season, please wash your brush, that kind of thing. But that's the least expensive and the most efficient way of communicating, I think.
I think we have a couple of good points were brought up, whether police officers go into a house for whatever it might be a call, and notices there's the laneway's tight, or whether it be, the oil delivery and so forth. I think that mechanism doesn't cost us anything. It's in place.
Yep.
They just need to have somewhere they can deposit that information, whether it's at the dispatch or whatever. And then you have your low hanging fruit of the ones, hey, we really know, whether it's be Dunn's Cartway or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think once we have that, then we look at, okay, how do we notify these people? Because I truly believe the majority of these people, either they just don't even realize it and brought to their attention. I think that we'll get some pretty good compliance with it.
I believe that too. I wonder if, I really do.
especially with the rescue, like I said.
Yeah.
That comes to my mind and we go up and visit Jamie, that road.
Yeah, right, yeah,
back in there.
yeah. Off Beacon Hill.
There's a bunch of those there.
Yeah,
It's pretty.
yeah, yeah, right.
More of a chance that you need a rescue in there for whatever reason, twisted ankle, knee, whatever it might be, a fall, a cut, then, and then, having a fun.
Then fire, yeah, yeah. Chris?
Chris Warfel again, Ebbets Hollow. I would support an ordinance for this and get it around the subdivision issue because there are situations where I can maintain my driveway, but the road in front of me is not maintained. And that's why I think a solution that affects every road owner, driveway owner would be most appropriate. And I wanted to bring up another issue if the discussion on this is finished. I've talked with Chris Hobie about it a couple of days ago in Miss Land. It has to do with the rescue building. And I just want to make sure it's a good time. This is an appropriate setting.
Go ahead.
Okay. It has to do with the solar electric system. The batteries on that have failed. Tried to salvage them and they have not been salvageable. So that system right now cannot operate. And so it needs new batteries. And there are two nonprofits out here that have been approached that appear that they would fund new batteries. And to me, this adds another layer of resiliency to our infrastructure. The generator that has been hooked up now to that rescue building definitely helps. However, that system is not generating any savings or revenue for the taxpayer because it can't operate without batteries. I've given a cost to Ms. Land and to Mr. Hobie about what I think it would take to replace those. And I was thinking if you're doing that, you might as well repower the modules just by placing new ones on there. I've done an economic analysis, presented it to various people. The upshot is that I said I would volunteer my time to do this. I think that donations would cover the material cost. I think the only costs left are any outside labor because I can't do all this myself, and one piece of equipment to help bring modules up on that roof. Anyways, the financial analysis shows that this is going to save money for everybody. We'll add another layer of resiliency because now this system cannot work, but with those batteries it can. And when you just run a building on a generator, just remember that generator runs whether there's one light bulb on or, a compressor. And when it's low loads, generators consume a lot of fuel. They're pretty inefficient. The nice thing about that solar electric system, when it's operational, that generator isn't needed until the batteries are depleted. And if we do the designs right, the solar system should keep them fully charged and the generator won't be necessary. So it just, again, it adds another layer of resiliency to the community, saves taxpayer dollars, and I think it will be extremely low cost.
Okay,
Thank you.
terrific. Thank you, Chris. Keith, Lewis, Doug, oh, wait.
All right.
Doug, you had your hand up for me. Okay. Age before, what is it? Age before beauty? Exactly.
Sosa said, one of the things I was going to say, you get a tax bill going out in 3 months. It's a perfect place to put a two-sided piece of paper. Every property owner gets it. There's no doubt they didn't get it. Secondly is I tell most of the people I work for, I says, keep your road clear. If a fire truck can't get down here, your house and contents are going down. And if you're lying on the floor and the rescue squad can't get to you, you're going down. So I tried to make that point. And if you do a letter, I would make it very strongly just like that. We can't get there, it's over. And the other thing, I was just in California and have friends who are trying a lot of trouble getting fire insurance out there, as Chris well knows. One of the things the insurance companies are pushing for is a 100-foot barrier around the houses.
Really?
Every direction, clear cut,
Wow.
no brush. Now, that's an insurance thing to me. My friends are having trouble getting insurance.
Yeah.
They do insurance different there. They have insurance for the outside of the house and insurance for the inside of the house, two separate policies. but insurance companies are looking for 100 feet around the houses.
Wow.
So, but I think also Chris said, fire department stressed, I think the town could very easily put this letter together with guidance, stick in that tax bill, and everybody knows.
Terrific. Thank you. Keith?
Thank you. Keith Lewis.
I didn't mean that you were a scofflaw, but that's what you heard.
I'm just the other Keith, the other real Keith. It seems that one thing I've learned is that the definition of forest fires or fires has changed. I remember visiting some friends who were out in the Midwest, and their area had suffered what was called a forest fire. So anyway, we visited them, and I said, this isn't a forest, it's a suburban area. And more, particularly with the fires this summer, or last summer, they sweep right through suburban areas.
Yeah.
And two, that Beacon Hill fire, I remember that fire. I was just a little kid, but I remember we went up and it started over near the intersection of Beacon Hill Road and West Side Road. And the image that sticks in my mind is Max Shelton, who was in the Coast Guard. He was up there fighting the fire with a burlap bag, just beating the flames. And obviously he was early arriving at the fire, and that was all he had. But that fire swept almost all the way to the New Harbor. And the third thing I want to mention is that one of the sweetest sounds I have in my memory is when our house was on fire. I was about 8 years old, and so my mother had to run down to Lester and Lester Littlefields to use the phone because the house was full of flames. But hearing that siren on the fire engine as they approached, I was 8 years old at the time. What a beautiful sound that was. So, thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
You know, Keith, I think one of the things, and I've said this to the chief before, is we think of wildfires, we think of California.
Yeah.
And we don't think of this area, but I mean, in Exeter last year, I don't know how many acres it was, and then in Coventry also had another area. So, you know, we're not immune to it, and some of these simple measures really can reduce the probability of, you know,
I hadn't been here
catastrophic.
for a long time, but the climate has changed, you know, for sure.
Well, I think moreover, the load has changed.
The load.
They're talking about grass fires. Now we have
Yeah.
a forest situation. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fire load is just, you know, just anytime you're walking, look into that dense brush and look how much is piled up that's dry below it. Yeah. Right, and then it gets everything above it going. A lot of these plants have very high oil content, and once it gets the right heat, it's just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Doug?
Yeah, just want to look. As Chris says, the forest fire changed. You look at California, you look at the hills, they're not massive things of trees. It's brush.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to clear that brush all the time. So there's limited what you can do. But around here, if you can cut that brush, limit it somehow.
Yeah.
So it's not, doesn't have to be a forest.
Yeah. Carlos?
So do you think like as part of reviewing this, could we review like what is the town ordinance right now for things like burn barrels and open burn and fireworks? Anything else along those lines?
The concern of the fireworks are great, but we have a commercial company come do it. We've moved them offshore on a barge, made it even safer. But really need to get after, and again, through real estate, that the home-owned fireworks or whatever you want to call them, that, you know, they have a great time and everything, but they're all going off. And if it's dry, then we have problems, and we need to curb that. And again, through education, you know, and the real estate companies, if I rented my house, I would like to put it in there. You cannot store fireworks on this property, you know, something like that. But those are very concerning. You contacted me the other night, and people had those Chinese, is that correct to say, lanterns? You know, but they're all going towards the wrong direction. The wind direction was wrong, and they're not going offshore, and they're landing on the dunes. And luckily it was dry the other night, you know, so there's a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
I think we can educate and maybe help save some problems. Thank you.
And there's no, I think the tolerance on fireworks, home fireworks, should be zero. I can tell you this, before we had the town display that was put up, every 4th of July, every dad wanted to put a little display on in the back of the yards, and the police department and the fire department was running around from call to call. Once we started doing the fireworks as a municipality, I mean, it cut that down to like maybe 20% of that. So there's no reason for it whatsoever. There's a fireworks display.
Hey, you know how you say you got a gas propane, et cetera, in your vehicle?
It all comes back to the ferry.
You want a lot of spaces on that boat, huh?
Okay, Carlos, and then we'll wrap this up.
Just something to consider. I think it was Roger Williams that wrote when he could ride on horseback across the forests of Rhode Island without stopping. And that's because the Narragansett people practiced the controlled burns. And many Native Americans have practiced controlled burns. And that would prevent the fires, and also the Narragansett would say also control vermin. So maybe ticks and what have you. So it's something to consider as you look at this issue. I wouldn't recommend doing it a DIY control burns. In fact, we know a friend that tried that in Pennsylvania, and it was disastrous, except that the next year, everything came out way greener than before.
Yeah.
But they needed, the help of people
Yeah.
like Chris in the meantime.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Carlos. Michael?
Michael Farrell. I'll just say one thing on this. If we send out a little flyer with the tax bill, you might consider some phraseology in there that deals with, if you're at the beginning of the road and it's not cleared, what have you done to your neighbors?
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
So I think that would help.
Yep. Good point. All right, ready to move on to noise? I know. We don't have long. You want to start? Or Paul, whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to ask the chief to start with a little bit of a preview of what this summer might bring around noise. We've moved to noise.
See you, man. Paul?
There shall be none. No. And again, you said that when I first became chief. If I had a magic wand,
Yes, right.
we could solve an awful lot of problems. This summer, Matt Moran has typically done all of our noise meter readings, and Matt is going to be taking the summer off. So,
Would you,
Chris,
guys?
take it down the hallway, please. Amy and I have discussed this a couple of times. I read through the ordinance about 14 different times, and there's nothing in it that said that you need to have a certified operator. You need to have a certified piece of equipment. I just got the sound meter back from Rutgers. It has been certified.
Right.
Amy and I have talked about this a lot, and because it is such a topic, there is a class that Rutgers is putting on towards the end of June, and then, the half day, go to New Jersey and all that. I've signed up for that. So we will have somebody that has been certified to take the test. The equipment has been certified to do it. The biggest day that is the thorn in everyone's side is Sundays. My contract says my work week shall be generally Monday through Friday. We all know how that's going to work out during the summer. It's expected I should be here during the weekends. And that's one of the reasons why when Amy and I talked about this, that I went and took the class, because I'm going to take the class because I will be here on Sundays. So that way there, it kind of covers that day that really is the biggest thorn in everybody's side. So by the end of June, we will have a certified operator. And like I said, the machine we actually just got back a couple of weeks ago. So everything is done and certified, and that's how we're gonna go.
So Chief, will there be others to be able to know how to use the machine also?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And for the couple of days that I need to go mow my grass, I am going to teach, pretty much everyone how to. It's pretty simple to do, but it's just knowing where you need to be, where you don't need to be, and how to properly document it.
And a lot of times, I think we found in the past, because I've been in the same shoes you're in, is it becomes a tool. Maybe the way the wind's traveling and so forth, a tool where you can find a happy ground with everyone. As far as, usually 9 times out of 10, it's more of a tool to get a resolve without having to have a summons issue.
Right. Right.
That's good news.
I know there's a broader discussion that people want to have, but I wanted to start with sort of what's going to be different this year. And I think even just having a fresh set of eyes and ears on the ground, and the delivery of having the chief enforcing that directly, I think may also shift the tone a little bit this summer. So.
Yes. Thank you, Paul.
How are you? I'm Bridget Price. That sounds a little deja vu-y to me. Like we heard this 2 years ago that this was the solution, and that Matt Moran was going to do the readings. He did 52 readings last year, and that was our tool. And we have absolutely no results of what happened, except that 52 readings, and the chief came up and said none of them were over. There's a 5-point margin of error in the readings that happen. And when I asked for 52 readings, I got 30 some readings. And when I evaluated them, roughly 17% of the readings that were done, were over, but because the 5-point margin of error came in, that they looked like they were within it. Another 17% were at 69 or 70. So 30% of the time, we're listening to maximum level. That's decibels. The other issue is the vibration is brutal. We have subwoofers, and we're not reading. The way the reading comes, the report that we fill out only reads decibels at a C level. There's 2 different levels that they read out. One captures the basses, the low vibration noises that you feel. I can block out sounds, and then I just feel it. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at this, and this avenue we've been down. And you have a lot of really unhappy people. And I've watched a lot of the meetings with people coming forward, and they're looking to, downtown looks like it's expanding. We've got a hotel, we're gonna have a new coffee place, like it's just getting bigger. And everybody that comes before us that wants to build, grow, start a business, add something, the public outcry is always around noise. And I think we should be proactive at looking at it. We're getting bigger constantly, every day. I mean, we're, coming in and giving licenses because, and it's great, I love it. But my personal well-being downtown it suffers. I hear noise all summer long. And I don't think it's fair. And I think we need to look at it. I mean, we all get up and we complain and we tell you all the issues, but there's never a solution. And this solution, to me, is tried and true. And I'm not, there's not one, there's not one person who came to my house this past summer that didn't say, including the chief, I wouldn't want it in my neighborhood. Yeah, it's loud. So there's no secret that it's loud. I'm just perplexed at why we're not addressing it.
What would you like us to do?
Well.
Wait, can I just interject here for a second? I just want to say that I don't think that the chief just stood up and said, this is the solution. I think the chief just stood up and said, we have a problem, which is that the person we've had in the past is unavailable this year, and this is my solution to that problem. So I don't think that in any way he was dismissing your issue.
No.
And I don't think that in any way he said that that was a solution to a problem. I think he said,
That's not
but,
how I interpret it.
but but the way you started was, we've done this.
We have done this.
Yes, I know that, but we have barely started this conversation about how we can address solutions. So I
Okay, great.
happy to hear, I mean, we have reams of information from you. And so we've all read it. We're all going to get through it. I just don't want to throw the chief under the bus at the beginning of the conversation because he has solved a problem that came up. And that's where I want to start.
And I want to follow up with something on to Molly. I also, first of all, I want to thank you for the work that you did on this. I've read through the whole thing, particularly what I found interesting was the decibel issue. I'm assuming it was the vibration issue you talked about in there. And I, to follow up with Molly said, I don't think the decibel meter is necessarily answer to everything, but is a tool. It's a tool that we have and decibels that we do have to measure. So we have to use all the tools that we have. Now, the question came up before, you know, is that the best measure, the best system we have for measuring? And I think our next step down the line, that's what we may have to look at. But right now, I think the town manager and the chief said, hey, listen, we recognize, you know, there's certainly complaints and issue here, and they're putting those things in place moving forward. So just so we're not all on to stay positive.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me
No,
let
no,
me
no, I'm
let
not
me just
offended.
back up, Molly, because what I said is we've been down this road. We were told this 2 years ago that there were tools, there was a ordinance, and there was enforcement. And then we came back after summer with 52 readings with no data. Like there was no, well, when the wind blows this way or the isolation was here, or there was nothing. And I just think out of 26 hours of readings that we would have more information. When I had stood up here last time, you know, I said that we needed to look at how acoustics worked. Like it's louder in my backyard than in my front yard. So I guess I was disappointed that our main tool produced such little data. And that's what I was saying. Like, I feel like we've been down with these meter readings, and it didn't get us any further ahead or any more informed.
Well, I think this is the point at which we have to discuss potential changes to our ordinance, potential changes to not just the noise ordinance, but maybe other ordinances. I mean, I have this article that I got out of the New York Times last week, right? This is from New York, where they're having the exact same issue in Forest Hills. I think that maybe, you know, we've said we need to compare to other communities, and what are other communities doing? Maybe Newport, we didn't really know where to start with this, right? Maybe Newport wasn't the right place to start. Maybe Forest Hills is the right place to start, right? Maybe because they are doing things. But, you know, we're here to take in people's suggestions. And I think, you know, I read a lot of this. You're definitely right. The vibration is an issue. You know, maybe we should be doing more on the building end of this to make sure that when people who have an outdoor entertainment license apply, that maybe we need to change that application to say, what are your sound muffling, you know, strategies, or how are you orienting your music, right? So that your music is, you know, if you have outdoor speakers, apparently, and I don't have a copy of our noise ordinance with me, but apparently your speakers are supposed to face in. How's that working, right? But how should we reevaluate that? Let's start with not live music. Let's start with you're playing DJ or, you know, streaming music at your outdoor bar, right? How are those speakers facing? Because they should be facing in. Where are they? Right? So we need to start thinking about this. And I don't think any of this is addressed in our ordinance. But it's big. It's also, it's something that people, like you say, we have no data, right? So this is something people feel, and we need to figure out better data on it. And but it's pretty elusive. Like, it's hard to pin down noise. You know, we could look at the ferry and say, oh, we saw 500 people get off the ferry, right? Or we could say, I just passed 10 mopeds, or, you know, but the noise, it's like, right? So we have to figure out better strategies. How do we apply them? You know, I mean, and I do think that we could apply these through outdoor entertainment licenses, asking better questions and having better requirements. We could start there.
Hi, Nancy Miles. I do not live in the historic district. I'm up by the school. In thinking about the outdoor entertainment license, I too agree that the ordinance needs reworking. It does actually state the speakers have to be pointed towards the building. And 2 years ago, when I was inundated with music coming from the Spring House, I drove over there. And what did I find? The piano players sitting outside, 25 feet from the building, yes, they were in compliance, except for the speakers, which now look like a pool noodle. They're omnidirectional. That's a problem. How do you point an omnidirectional speaker towards the building when it's going to come out in 360 degrees? You can't. My thought was maybe the ordinance needs to say it has to be a box speaker. I know that someone is going to say, well, you can turn off half of the speaker, the omnidirectional speakers, but does the police department really need to waste their time figuring out how the sound is coming out of a pool noodle speaker? I don't think so. I think it's easier to just say it has to be a box speaker. Because as technology changes, you don't want to have to redo the ordinance all the time. I think there's a bigger issue. I'm a third of a mile to a half a mile from certain businesses. I don't really care what the decibel level is. At a half a mile away, should I be hearing enough music that I can't watch television, read a book, or go to bed? I don't understand decibels, but I don't have to. A half a mile away is too far. Based on how the ordinance was written, I'm sure that the people who were sitting here whenever that happened said, how are we going to protect the surrounding community? Well, let's have them turn the speakers towards the building. Someone had to have been concerned about it, or that wouldn't be in the ordinance. We seem to have gotten past that. Now it almost seems like businesses feel it's their right to do this. As long as they can blast it, whatever the decibels are, they don't really care where the music goes, who has to hear it. So, on that note, you mentioned, what do other towns do? You know, I don't understand decibels, but I do understand how sound travels. I was a science teacher. The only subject I was not well versed in was physics. Shame on me. But I do know how sound travels. And that's the reason why you can't really look to other communities. We are unique. I know you don't like to hear, well, I like to hear that. I don't really know. Our size is unique. Our location is unique. The wind conditions, atmospheric conditions, topography, and vegetation. Our vegetation is significantly different than what you're going to see in Westerly, Narragansett, Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, New York. It's not the same. So, once again, the other thing I would put in the ordinance is that a business would have to turn the volume down. I don't care what the decibel meter says. If people outside their area are being bothered by their music, the same way they would make a weather decision, because it's going to be based on weather. But a business would make that determination anyways. If it was raining, they're going to say, well, let's not have it outside today. So when it's in their best interest, they're going to make the decision. But when it's in the community's interest, they don't seem to want to. Maybe that needs to be in the ordinance. I have a problem with the number of hours that the ordinance allows this to go on. It's currently 9 hours. And I'm sure, well, I'm not really sure, I'm going to guess that a business may not blast the music for 9 hours. But when you look at the number, the National, Nick's, Poor People's Pub, Kimberly's, Kittens, Macaloons, and Tigerfish, what's it going to sound like down there if they all blast their music between 12 and what is it, 9? I can't even imagine. So that brings me to the next thing. The number of outside amplified entertainment licenses is out of control. We are a tiny community. I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot. Anybody who comes up with $200 can get one. Maybe there needs to be a limit to that number. And while you have businesses, a lot of businesses in a small area, maybe it's done on a rotating basis. You get it this year, you get it next year, you get it next year. And maybe that's how you start to limit it. The other thing, my science classroom was significantly larger than this room. I had 24 students, I was never amplified. Nobody ever had a problem hearing me. Maybe in the ordinance, you should have a size limit. As you look downtown, I can't think of one business that needs amplification for someone to hear music on their property, not off their property, on their property. If the idea is to grab people because you're making all this noise and people are going to come, I think that's the wrong, in my mind, that's the wrong idea with an outdoor entertainment license. I think, and I wish I could go back in time to whenever someone came up with this idea, what the topic of conversation was amongst the town council and how they would have addressed the space. I don't think anyone thought about space. I don't really know the businesses on the west side, how big they are and who has licenses over there, but in the downtown area, nobody really needs to be amplified. And I know you have a non-amplified license because I was sitting here one day when, I don't know the name of the restaurant that's in the post office building, the one that overlooks Rebecca's, Sandwich Bucket or something.
Yeah.
They wanted one. And you guys said you can have a non-amplified one. Made sense. It's a postage stamp, but they're all postage stamp buildings. They all have an interior. They can play their music inside. They're not going to go out of business. When it comes to violations, there doesn't seem to be a way to enforce a violation. Nobody ever seems to get one. The first offense should be a warning, but that should literally be written up and then submitted to the town hall and a copy going to whoever it was who asked for that outdoor entertainment license. If there's a second offense, the license is gone for the remainder of that year. In my mind, that frees up a very valuable limited resources, AKA our police department. I can't tell you how many times I question my self-worth when I'm being bombarded with music. I can't enjoy my home. And I don't want to call the police, which is the protocol, because that takes our resource that I would like to see going for, I don't know, accidents, traffic, whatever. I hate to say that I don't think this is worth it because I do. It affects my health. It affects my mental health. But I look to the good of the community and I say, well, I think the police probably have better things to do. And then after a while, I just get so incredibly out of my mind, I end up calling. I think there are things you can do and things that need to be thought about, such as the number of licenses, the size of the property, whether it warrants amplification or not, that would make life in my mind, better for the entire community. The businesses are not going to go out of business. They're not going to stop making money. They're not going to stop selling booze. It's summer on Block Island. That's what they do. But at some point, I'm hoping that the town council will then say, well, tourists are important and businesses are important, but maybe the homeowners are important also. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've sat here for a while, and we've obviously talked a lot about the noise, and it's an issue. Part of reading the noise ordinance that I think we could tweak pretty easily is that it's at the receiving land. In other words, I have to go to Cindy's property line to take the decibel reading. Okay, so if the ordinance is changed such so that if there is a complaint about wherever it is, the Spring House, and as Ms. Miles stated, if I go to her house and take readings at her house, they're going to be below the decibel reading. We're still going to be able to hear it, but it won't trigger going over that. Can you tweak your ordinance to state that it shall be from the sidewalk in front or X number of feet away from that particular business or house that is creating this noise? Because the way it's written now, we have to go to the complainant's house where it may be below the decibel level, whereas maybe on the sidewalk in front, it might not be, or in the neighbor's yard if they're having a wedding, because quite frankly, I hear the Sullivan House all summer long.
Sure, yeah.
We kind of know what bands are in rotation up there. So that might be a solution that I think would be a pretty easy tweak to that ordinance. And I think it also might make a difference in terms of what numbers you're actually seeing decibel wise, because now you're not half a mile away taking readings, you're on the property line.
Chief, are most of your complaints coming from the outdoor entertainment, or is it the evening?
It is mostly the outdoor entertainment. Every once in a while, we'll get one, and again, it's kind of weather dependent. You get the wind, it's hot. Tigerfish has their DJ guy on Wednesday night. All the windows are open, wind's blowing right, neighbor down the street calls. But there again, it's how far away do we need to be taking these measurements?
Interesting.
And saying, okay, well, because the complainant lives half a mile away, it falls within the limit, but on the sidewalk out in front, it might be above it. So as a way to, I know you guys are tired of talking about it. Well, I mean, in terms of that, but it's looking at the way the ordinance is written, looking at the complaints, it might be in a pretty easy way to tweak this a little bit and try and give some relief, but also take a small step and say, okay, we tried something. And if it doesn't work, at least we tried something.
That seems like a super practical change. Because I think the other piece of it is subjective, right? Because like I can hear the bands, the wedding bands at the Spring House if I'm out in my garden. They don't bug me, but they're bugging Nancy, right? So that's where it becomes subjective. So, but maybe neither one of us should be hearing them so clearly. I don't think there's a way to not hear them at all, but but maybe we shouldn't be hearing them so clearly. I think if we could change the location, that would be a really practical thing to try.
It like I said, it would be a step.
Don't point at you. Come up here. Oh, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether Paul was staying. I was saying, feel free to use this one too.
Thank you. I love what you said. Because I was going to say the same. I'm just quickly going to play for you two things. One is, the first one I'm going to play is Yellow Kittens to My House in My Bedroom. And it's 1,667 feet away, according to Google Maps. Oops. Is this on? This is on, right? So when it's going on, it's really loud. It's really annoying. I'm now going to play Captain Nix. This was after a reading at my house where I get no reading. This is upstairs in the bedroom. This is my bedroom.
What time of day was this, Cindy?
It's before 9 because they have to stop the music at 9. Yeah, it's Sunday night. Sunday night's bad. I have to be at work at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not up at 9 o'clock. Paul works first thing in the morning. I mean, there's a lot of people working in this neighborhood. So anyway, that's but if I may, I have a ton of stuff to say. And I know, and I want to thank you again, actually, just to reiterate, for having us and to discuss it, because we really need a lot of changes to this ordinance and how we do it. And that was great. Something I thought about myself is we never, every time that comes, we're never in violation. Yet I'm listening to that in my house. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's a great solution to figure that out. It just seems like the business owners are the ones that make out and we don't ever. So Matt and you are going to go see Professor Eric Zerling, who is the head of Rutgers, who has been really helpful in this whole thing. He runs Rutgers Technical Assistance Center, and he's a leading authority in the country on noise. And he goes around the world and speaks. And he said it's not the decibels. It's not so much the decibels. The problem is the intensity of sound, the frequency of vibration, amplitude, and the bass. The bass is the big one. That's where you get the woofers and the subwoofers. And they all travel differently. It's very interesting about sound and how it does. Speaking to me, smiles there. It travels through the air differently. The impact and it impacts our senses differently. The divergence on our property is horrible. So I want to focus on that because I think it's the music. It's the type of music, and I found a solution. One thing that we don't even have in our ordinance are the things that are the most disturbing to all of us with the music is the frequency, the pitch, the duration. We have definitions for everything but these things: repetition, woofers, subwoofers, pitch, amplitude, bass, vibration, reverberation, echo. None of those things are in there, and those are the things that are affecting us. A couple other things, the context and the setting. The noise is out of place in our homes. We're not at the bar. We're in a quiet environment trying to do our thing, and we're being bombarded with music. The time of day, the proximity to sensitive areas. Low frequency sounds travel longer distances without losing energy. It affects people farther away from the source, impacting more people in the area. The perceived loudness, even if the decibel of a subwoofer is within the permissible limits, the human ear can perceive the low frequency sounds as louder or more disturbing than high frequency sounds. This perception is because the lower frequencies can be felt as much as they're heard. And that's from Professor Zerling. Keith asked at the last meeting what are other towns doing? And so I just want to circle back to Boone Street Market, which was sort of my test case, which was just, if people don't know, it's in Narragansett. It's across from Crazy Burger. It was a laundromat. And now it's a restaurant with music in the bar, loud music, outside music. they came, they were brand new. The neighbors went crazy because it was a new business with screaming music, garbage, you know, people leaving, screaming, yelling, the whole thing. So it got very contentious. They went to the town of Narragansett, and they ended up, the gal that owns it, Lindsay Holmes, who, by the way, just bought, she's going to be a neighbor of ours. She bought Jill Helterline's house. And I'm really impressed with this gal because she just really did things right. She tried to do mitigation first with privet and canvas and things around the walls, even though it was an outside space to calm it down. She even lowered the decibel from 70 to 65, and the town was not having it. So in December 24th, they did this probationary thing on her that said that you could only have music till 9 o'clock outside, and you can move the music inside till 11. She decided this year, I called back this year, a few weeks ago to see what was going on with everything. And they bagged it because they just thought it just wasn't fair to the neighborhood. And that's totally different from us because we have pre-existing bars. So, but this, I think this might be our solution, which I really like the solution. There's 2 restaurants in East Greenwich. One is called Blue and one is called Finn's Harborside. And the location are right in the, on the dock area. Blue is, it's on the water. It's in Narragansett Bay. The dock is right there. That's where they have all their seating. They have a bar and then a band in back of the bar. Big restaurant. Right next door, they have Finn's Harborside. Sadly, Finn's Harborside, must be the name, had a huge fire and they've been closed. And I don't even know if they're opening this year. But in 2019, the town of East Greenwich just decided, okay, we're having all these complaints about noise. We're just going to lower the decibel from 70 to 60. Well, Blue wasn't having that. They filed a lawsuit. It went on for 4 years. And it actually, in 2023, they came to a good solution. The lawyer said it all went really well because the outcome was good because nobody was happy, and that three cases were dismissed, 3 were kept. And in the meantime, what they had to do was, the problem with us and the problem with them it's the subwoofers. That is the bass that is in our chests. It's in the home. It goes farther. They decided that they were going to drop the subwoofers. No bar in East Greenwich can have these. They dropped the decibel level from 70 to 65. They did something really interesting, and the guy from Blue that I talked to, he's all for it now. He's the one that brought the suit, and he's happy because now you have to have house equipment. You have to have house speakers, house amplifiers, and any band that comes in has to use this equipment, and it's all set by an inspector, a sound engineer. Excuse me? Oh, that's okay. So there are many inspectors out there. They're everywhere. The guy that represented the town was a Dr. Singleton. He's with Cross Spectrum Acoustics. The guy that I talked to quite a bit was Mr. James Miller. Dr. James Miller is a chair at University of Rhode Island Engineering, teaches classes in acoustical oceanography, sonar, underwater acoustics. But they both agreed that it was the bass, like get rid of the bass. And you do measure the bass with the C-weighted decibels. We are using A-weighted decibels. So we're not even getting that. So when Matt Moran is doing, a fine job and coming up and doing it, he's not getting what we're hearing or what Nancy's hearing.
And it's just a change on the reader.
And the reason that East Greenwich, one of the reasons why East Greenwich stopped using it, is there in a particularly rough area as far as, they have stone buildings, they have a train, they have, there's a marina, there's just too much. So they were picking up all this extra, which is the problem with the C weight, is it picks up other interference, but it's the only thing that goes for those subwoofers. And I mean, I honestly think that's the solution. So the way it works is now, for instance, the guy that owns Blue, his name is Brandon, he hired a audio engineer that comes once a year to his restaurant and bar, and he sets up the equipment. He puts it on the dial, the number it should be, and then he walks away. And nobody can touch that. And that's the way it is in all the bars. And then they have people that go in to inspect randomly when it's a big night. Everybody's there to just go look at those numbers and see if everything's all right. Not a problem all year. They had a really good year for 2024.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. And that he's Blue. I mean, Blue was the one that brought the suit, and they're the ones that are all happy now. He also ended up building a container, like very much like Ballard's, which I think that Ballard's was, I mean, being a neighbor of Ballard's at Island Bound for so long, my office, I couldn't even hear in there, but it makes a difference. It's not great in all directions, but it was helpful. And I think you have to come halfway and do some mitigation. If you're going to be part of this, you've got to help us out here. You've got to do something to stop that, to stop the sound. His acoustical engineer was $1,468 a year to pay. He said that's not a problem to have the guy come in and do it. And it's fair, like everybody's on an even playing field. I mean, all bars have to be at 65 and the engineer comes in, which I thought was great. The guy, where is it? I just wanted to submit Mr. Miller, Dr. Miller, who did, just for your edification, this is all of what he did for East Greenwich, and I thought that was helpful for you to look at. This is his report. So, it's just a way for you guys. I left out 13 pages of his credentials and citations I didn't think you needed to see. He's also involved in a lot of lawsuits and things there that he is the witness to these things. And one Tristan will be interested in is that it's the helicopter. Somebody has hired him. So, but I'll just give that to.
Cindy, have you found that the ordinances have the base measurement in them? The base measurement, have you found when you were in your research, did you find some of the ordinances have a measurement for that, a level?
It's a really good question. So-
If you discover that other towns weighted it.
They do, a lot of them do.
So there's, I'm going, Keith.
No, I was just following, like, you might do I'm totally making these numbers up, by the way, but you might do a 50 decibel for bass.
Right.
But
Well, talking is
65
60. So 50 is really low.
The point behind this
I'm
is,
just,
Okay.
that's why I said,
Yeah.
I'm totally making these
Oh, okay,
numbers
okay.
up. I don't know. But is it a differential decibel threshold for bass versus non-bass?
I don't-
BASS.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't want to speak to that.
Yeah.
It's just that this C picks it up, or you can get rid of it altogether. And I honestly think that's our problem.
well, in absence of totally getting rid of it, I guess what I'd like to see, is there a different measurement under the C for what the base is from that? That would be, that would be. Thanks, chief.
Exactly.
And both Professor, both Professor Zerwig and this guy Miller all say we should use the A and the C. They just didn't in Greenwich because of the train thing, and it just wasn't going to work out.
So Paul, I don't know whether you can tell us this before you get your PhD, but is there like a dial that you can test for A and you can test for B? Or excuse me, C?
The answer to that, but
Yeah.
I am going to find out.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a button.
It's a button? Gotcha.
Okay, and that's the A weighted, and then the C weighted is read as a DEC.
Okay.
So, oh, excuse me, on my phone.
Can I just go back? I just want to clarify that we're still talking all about outdoor
Yes.
noise.
Yeah.
We haven't migrated to indoor noise, or have we?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hear outdoor noise. I mean, that's kind of what, I mean, I just think that's the noisy one that we're mostly dealing with. I'm assuming that bars are hopefully air conditioned with doors shut. I don't know. I don't think they really are because I'm hearing kittens and are they? No answer. Yeah, I was wondering if you're air conditioned. I'm wondering if you're air conditioned at night when the bar goes inside, when the music. Okay, is that something you would consider to shut the doors and windows? Okay, thank you.
I'll say this in the past, you know, 'cause you've been around a while here. A lot of our problems in the past had been the indoor, and it seems like the indoor has made some pretty good headways if we're really focusing on the outdoor at the nighttime. So yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The vibrations are into the night, so they are coming from the night, the indoor music. But the venues that house live bands are not insulated. I don't think there's soundproofing materials in them. Like there's a lot of ways for the venues to mitigate the sound that travels out too. So, you know, bands are all different. They all offer different things. I mean, I think you'll get a lot of pushback from setting one standard for all bands, but.
Well, I wasn't looking to, my point was, you know, I remember a time that we had a lot of our problems with the late night, and it wasn't the daytime. And so at least it seems like, and I think Cindy, you know what I'm speaking about.
And I think what Bridget said earlier is really true, right? Like that the development of amplification equipment from the time this ordinance was written is totally different.
Yes.
And I think also building materials are different, right? Like if we were to go to your place, like what used to be like not your place, not if we were not to go to your place, but what used to be like dirt and wood is now stone, and that changes the way that the noise moves around. So that's where I'm saying, like, maybe we should be looking at this in a lot of different ways. We should be looking at this in a materials way. And like you said, I mean, we don't want to, obviously, Rhode Island has a very bad history with insulating bars, but there are safe ways to do it. So we should be maybe looking at some of those too.
This was what you've just described for the last 5 minutes is sort of what I was asking last time.
Okay,
which
yeah,
is-
I wanted to answer your
Which
question.
is, you know, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this stuff. What
Right.
have, you know, how do people deal with this?
I ended up with 3 good names though, and
Yeah,
numbers. And
great.
also just to answer the question about the kittens recording, that was like 12:30 at night, so that had to be inside. And that's what I'm hearing. Let me just skip through this. And I mean, there's plenty of other, I mean, I think that is almost the simple solution is to cut out, I mean, and have, you know, nobody in East Greenwich is having a problem buying that equipment and it's fair. And I said, are bands like, you know, giving you grief about that when they want to go? And Brandon's remark was like, no, because they want the money. You know, they're going to play. I mean, it's not, nobody's walked away because they can't put their own speaker there. It's like, okay, I mean, I don't like it, but I'm doing it. Just a couple other things to consider when we're looking at the current noise table, which was obviously lowering the decibel level. I mean, it's at 70. We're also, like, we live in one zone. And Captain, and I'm Calico Hill, and obviously 3 Sisters. Nix and Yellow Kittens are in another zone with different numbers. Like, why isn't it consistent from Paynestock, which is ramping up? We have Spring House down there, then, you know, and I would bring that all the way to Spring House here, Atlantic, and then over to the Sullivan for you. And, but I mean, I just think we should have like I don't know about these zones. They don't seem to go, I don't know if they're part of our, when I started this whole thing, I went to Jim Brady because I thought it was a zoning issue, like the zones, they're just totally arbitrary. So I think that we have to think about that. I don't know why we're having different numbers. It would be better to tighten that up. And I think the distances are really something to consider. The one that I used before with Jennifer at the last meeting was I did your measurements on Google search. Jennifer hears 4 music venues at once. She lives on Sunset Hill. So she is hearing from the Spring House is 1,835 feet. Captain Nick's is 2,566 feet. The Atlantic is 1,245 feet, and Yellow Kittens is 2,649 feet. So that's sort of addressed, and you guys are both on Sunset Hill. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's insane how far these distances are and the disturbance. I really think that the margin of error it's not helping us as homeowners or businesses or, you know, to have the margin of error only makes things louder, because now the band, they can play 70 or 75, when the experts have now said if you go from 70 to 65, it makes a world of difference and it's still enjoyable. No one's ever said the music's not loud enough in these bars.
So just to clarify, 70 is our threshold, but 75 is margin of error.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So of course, you know, we had a bunch of readings in that 75, which is so crazy loud. I just think, and then the other thing, I'm not going to get into state law or anything. I'm going to give someone else a term. But anyway, I have multiple things to say. But I do have a lot of notes when we get to what we should do about the ordinance, like changes in the ordinance. And
Can I suggest something? And I say this with greatest respect. We had the financial town meeting on Monday. We had a council meeting last night. It is now 6:15. I actually am having dinner with my wife at 6:30 because we haven't seen one another very frequently. So if we could, I think we have some concrete stuff to go on, and what I'd like to do is put this on a soon agenda to look at our ordinance in the context of some of these things. And obviously that will be work session-y. So if someone has something really important to say, I'd love to hear it. But if you can wait a couple weeks so I can go home and have dinner.
Can I just add one more thing?
Please.
I also have to go home and make dinner. But I would like to add that, like, later in the materials that you gave us, you discussed the noise on the street from pedestrians after bars are closing. And I know that a lot of cities have addressed that in different ways, like primarily with signage that's in the bars and with bouncers, right? So I know, because we've talked about this, I know my daughter, every time she goes to a city, sends me pictures of the signage in different cities. This isn't an uncommon thing. I'm not sure what the overall way to deal with it is, but it does appear that a lot of people are addressing it through signage, which we could probably do as well.
Mm-hmm.
or staggered leaving, like you shut the music off 20 minutes before the bar closes, or the alcohol. And if you know, one or the other people will leave staggered, not that they are staggered, but I mean, leave in a staggered way out of the building, and maybe won't be, people unloading.
The one important takeaway, I think, here that you had said, Cindy, and like, again, I think you've done a lot of research, and, and I know we've read it and appreciate it.
Thank you.
But there was one takeaway that I listened when you were talking about Blue on the Water. There's a lawsuit for 4 years and so forth. And it seemed when they worked together, they ended up coming with a resolution. So I think it's really important what we do. We try to get to the point where we can still all work together and find that common ground
I agree.
without a 4-year lawsuit from either side, that type of thing. No, no, I'm saying, but I think that was an important thing I pulled from there. So I think we get all the stakeholders together and say, is there common ground we can get to?
Sure. Absolutely. Please, Jennifer. Absolutely. I'm sorry.
No.
It's all about me.
Jennifer Phillips. Last time I spoke, I began with the problem of my office and hearing ballards and having to call repetitively. Because at what point is my business being affected and I close windows and I can't even talk on the phone because of the music and people screaming at ballards. And I would call, and I call reluctantly. I call the police. I know that they're busy. It's usually Friday or Saturday, and I know that they're busy. And they would go, and the music would quiet down for 10 minutes, and then they put it back up. So having them go, I'm not going to call again and again and again, but that's what some of these establishments do. Or I know that ballards would. They would lower it when they were told to. And I have to assume that the decibels were read somewhere from the post office because I never saw anyone come to my office and take a reading from my office. But they just turned it right back up. So I don't think that that was very effective. And I was annoyed and I was wasting people's time. So I feel like the whole option or the whole idea that Cindy said of everybody's equipment should be uniform and set and remain that way, it would really help the police. Because otherwise it's just turning it up, turning it down, turning it up, and it doesn't get anywhere.
Right.
And then I'll let you go have your dinner. I read also where there is a option to have a master receiver, like at the police station, where venues would have a meter that read constantly and report back to a base. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there.
This has been really helpful because I think the reason that we were stagnated is that I do laundry for a living, so no, this is not my forte. This is not something anybody on this council does. It feels like trying to catch a fish, right, with your hands. It's impossible. But this is real information. These are really good suggestions. And I think if we push this to another meeting where we're asking more people to come with your really good suggestions, including the businesses, what they can do to help, I think we're going to get to a much better place. So thank you guys for all the information.
Thank you, guys. Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.